It wasn't the gavel that hushed the courtroom. It was the smack of a blue folder onto the oak table. Flat, final, heavy. Everybody's head turned. Everybody's breath caught in midair. Meri Brown did not blink. She was sitting stiffly, back straight, eyes locked on the woman in front of her. Robyn hailed. Robyn shifted uncomfortably, her jaw clenching as if she already knew what was in that folder. The slight shake in her hand gave away her serene face. The judge leaned forward. "Miss Brown," he whispered, his tone low but authoritative, "are you aware of what showing you this file amounts to?" Meri nodded once. "I do, Your Honor." The folder on the table between them was like a live wire. For months, the court had heard tales of trust betrayed, of ambition and secrecy splitting up a family. But up to that point, it had all been talk, accusations. Now there was evidence. Across the room, Cody Brent's face broke. He tilted toward his attorney, whispering something biting, something frantic. Robyn didn't shift. She simply gazed at the folder, her pulse beating visibly at her throat. The judge waved to the bailiff. "Enter it into evidence." A shuffling murmur spread through the crowd. Reporters, family, faces which had observed this tale play out at a distance. The sound built and then ceased, following the bailiff as he walked over towards the table. Meri's hand rested for an instant above the folder. Then, with a serenity that had been practiced by suffering, she pushed it in blue. Unblemished. Plain, except for its burden. "This," she whispered, "is the report of the DNA." Robyn's mouth opened, but nothing emerged. The eyes of the judge shot to her. "Mrs. Hale, do you have a response?" There was silence. Meri gazed at her, not with rage or even triumph, but something profound, a soft sort of truth, the sort that won't scream. Somewhere in the back pew, a woman gasped, and for the first time during the trial, Robyn Hale was speechless. For nearly a minute, nothing stirred. The air within the courtroom grew thick with what everyone knew to come but refused to speak. Robyn Hale sat rigid, hands clutched tight enough to leave impressions. Her lawyer huddled close, whispering, but she didn't reply. She couldn't. Her gaze was fixed on the folder now lying on the judge's bench. Meri Brown ignored her. She didn't have to. She had accomplished what she set out to do. Across the courtroom, Cody Brent fidgeted in his seat. The swagger that used to propel him, the stance, the self-satisfied half-smile, the effortless charm, was gone. He seemed smaller in some way. Weary. Imprisoned. The judge coughed. "This report will be read in its entirety. But before we go any further," he paused, peering over his glasses at the two women. "I must ask once again, are you both absolutely sure you wish this on the record, Ms. Brown?" Meri's response was instant. "Yes, Your Honor." Her voice did not shake. If anything, it was more stable than it had been in weeks. A chair creaked somewhere behind her. One of the witnesses, most likely a reporter, attempting to grab every detail. Cameras were not permitted inside, but everyone was well aware that this story would make its exit somehow. It always did. Robyn finally breathed, dispelling the stillness. "Your Honor," she started, her voice reed thin, "this is not required." "She's—" "Mrs. Hale," the judge interrupted, "you'll have your turn to speak. Right now, we're addressing the evidence." Robyn's eyes flicked toward Cody, seeking reassurance. He didn't look back. Meri watched all of it quietly. The glances, the panic, the unraveling. This wasn't revenge. It was truth. She remembered the first time she'd suspected it, a quiet afternoon, a stray comment, a pattern that didn't fit. She dismissed it, called herself paranoid. Until the evening she couldn't any longer. That evening she called for the test. That evening she chose silence was no longer loyalty. The judge nodded to the clerk. "Go ahead." Paper crackled. Pages flipped. Each sound resonated like a slam of a gavel, and when the courtroom prepared for what was in that blue folder, Robyn Hale's fingers trembled. The judge raised the blue folder, opening it with caution as if it were delicate, as if it would shatter the room if mishandled. Meri's eyes never ventured off the front of the courtroom. She didn't have to look at Robyn. She already knew the impact it would have. The first page slid out. A single line of text glared back at the judge. He hesitated, fingers still on the paper. His brow creased, lips compressing into silent incredulity. Cody Brent leaned forward, voice growing louder before he could prevent it. "This is outrageous. You have no authority." The judge's hand flashed up. Silence descended once more, heavier this time. Even the reporters ceased typing. Even the bailiff ceased moving his weight. Meri drew in a small breath. "It's not about rights. It's about truth," she stated. Her voice, level but incisive, sliced through the courtroom like a knife. Robyn Hale's chair made a sound as she moved. She spoke softly to her lawyer, but the words did not extend beyond him. The judge read on. Another page. And another line. Every line systematic, factual, irrefutable, constructed and unseen crescendo, DNA testing. Dates. Official notarized documents. All the details fell into place. All the numbers led to one place. The air turned icy cold. Dense. Even the walls appeared to hunch in closer, eager to listen to the truth they'd been denying for so long. Cody's fists curled. "No. This can't be correct," he growled. His words broke, harsh like shattered glass. Meri didn't say a word. She just pushed the next page across the judge's desk. Silenced. Efficient. Confident. The judge's glasses reflected the fluorescent lighting. He adjusted them and read aloud, slowly measured. The DNA evidence indicates a 99.97% maternal match to Ms. Brown. The words dropped like stones, but Robyn's eyes widened. Her lips parted, no sound emerging. She swallowed, attempting to force words that refused to come. Cody's jaw clenched. His face went pale. He swallowed hard, attempting to conjure up denial, but the courtroom seemed to have already devoured it all for him. Meri's eyes never left the screen. She sat, hands clasped on her lap, radiating the serenity of a woman who had waited years for this moment. A long, strained silence ensued. Then the judge glanced up. "Mrs. Hale," he asked, voice firm but weighted, "would you like to make a comment on this report?" Robyn Hale's hands shook. For the first time, words deserted her completely. The courtroom was silent. All eyes were upon her. Each heartbeat heard. Meri Brown's silent confidence filled the gap that silence could not. Truth did not require a voice. Truth just was. The courtroom was stifling in its silence. Robyn Hale's hands trembled so wildly it was a wonder she didn't spill her glass of water. Her gaze shifted to Cody Brent, searching for reassurance, searching for some indication that this nightmare could be avoided, that this moment could be halted, delayed, reversed. But he didn't turn around. His jaw clenched. His face was ashy. His poise had left him in its entirety. Meri Brown, however, sat as still as a statue, back upright, fingers clasped, eyes serene. She could sense the tension reverberate through the room with every irregular breath, every nervous slither, every sighing gasp that attempted to move from the lips of those sitting in the gallery. She needn't say a word. Her silence was more forceful than any protest. It exuded confidence, stillness, and a type of unshakable strength that arises only from decades of possessing the truth. The judge at last lifted his eyes from the report, pushing his glasses back up onto his nose. The blue folder had been opened, pages read studiously, methodically. He lifted his hand fractionally, indicating to Robyn. "Mrs. Hale," he told her, his tone slow and deliberate, "you may respond to this evidence." Her throat constricted. Words struggled their way free, but panic choked them down. She swallowed over and over, trying to make herself say something, trying to regain control of a situation that had already spun out of her hands. Cody Brent shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His fingers wrapped around the edge of the table. His eyes, wild and frantic, flashed from Meri the judge to the witnesses and back. "This is ridiculous," he growled, voice cracking. "This cannot be." The judge's hand shot up, firm and commanding. "Mr. Brent." Silence. "You will be quiet until spoken to." "Mrs. Hale, your answer." Robyn let out a harsh breath, a shaking hiss that caught the eye of everyone in the courtroom. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. The words spilled out in a whisper, hardly audible, near lost in the gravity of the situation. I didn't know, she started. Her voice cracked, splintering under the weight. I never meant. Meri's eyes never wavered from her. She didn't have to respond. Robyn's voice, delicate and shaking, was sufficient. It undermined all Meri had already realized, the secret falsehoods, the carefully woven half-truths, the years of deception that had been guardedly preserved for show. The judge shifted slightly forward, elbows on the bench. His voice fell soft, though it was still commanding. Mrs. Hale, if there is anything you would like to explain, now is the moment. Robyn hesitated. Her hands were locked together in her lap. Her whole body shook. She glanced at Cody, silently begging him to step in, to protect her from the fallout of what was about to happen. But Cody was stuck, white-faced, speechless, immobilized by the force of reality. Meri's eyes caught Robyn's for a full moment. Not with rage, not with victory, but with the unshakable authority of a person whose patience and determination had ultimately hit its wall. I didn't intend for anyone to be harmed, Robyn finally confessed, voice elevating slightly, rough with emotion. I believed I was defending. Her sentence hung in the air. The courtroom waited with bated breath. The sentences she couldn't quite complete lingered, like smoke, thick and unshakable. Meri's gaze softened by almost imperceptible degrees, but her stance remained rigid. She had not come here to humiliate, not to punish, but to uncover the truth. And in that disclosure, Robyn's expertly sustained illusion was eroding, bit by bit. The judge rapped his gavel gently, commanding the room's focus. "We will go slowly," he said. "But hear this. The evidence speaks for itself, and the party's testimony will be judged accordingly." Robyn leaned forward slightly, spent, both emotionally and mentally. She had sought to keep things in hand, to control the story, but the evidence, cold, clinical, irrefutable, had taken that out of her hands. Meri breathed softly, a quiet sound few would notice, but which held weight. This was what she had waited for. This was the moment when truth would at last be acknowledged. The courtroom was quiet, but it no longer stood still. It was a pressure cooker, heavy with expectation. And for the first time that morning, Robyn Hale's voice had pierced the silence, and in doing so, revealed the truth Meri had uncovered. Cody Brent's fingers curled around the rim of the table until his knuckles were white. His chest rose and fell, each breath sharp, irregular, revealing the tension he had tried to keep in check for years. He opened his mouth, then closed it. A low, barely audible groan left him. The judge's gaze stayed fixed on him, patient and unyielding. "Mr. Brent, if you'd like to say something, now is the time," he warned. His voice was heavy with a gravity that pushed against the walls, the benches, the gallery, a warning that no histrionics could override reality. Cody swallowed hard, his atoms apple jerking up and down like a desperate metronome. He looked at Robyn. She winced under his inspection, her hands still shaking. She wanted to talk, to explain, to deny, but words were nothing now. The proof, the blue folder, the DNA, the dates, the forms it had already spoken. Meri Brown kept calm. She did not need to speak. Her eyes were glued on him. Every twitch of movement, every shake, every drop of sweat was observed. She had practiced nothing, but all that she had suffered readied her for this moment. Cody at last cleared his throat, the sound coarse and cracked. This wasn't how it was meant to go," he stated, his voice trembling. I did what I believed was right. The judge held up a hand. "Quiet." Cody's words lingered in midair, unfinished. The courtroom leaned forward as a group, as if gravity itself wished to squeeze the remainder of the sentence out. "I was defending the family," Cody went on, voice lifting in frustration, desperation edging into his tone. "The brand, the image, the children." His voice broke on the final word, almost splitting completely in two. Meri's eyes didn't move. She had listened long enough to excuses, to justifications all these years. This was not about image, not about appearances. This was regarding the truth, And the DNA did not lie. "Mr. Brent," said the judge in a calm voice, "safeguarding the family is not the way to give you the right to distort the truth. You are here to face your actions, not to defend them." Cody's hands were now shaking furiously. He clutched the arms of the chair, white-knuckled. "You don't understand," he muttered softly, almost inaudible. "You don't know." "Yes, I do," Meri replied softly, her tone firm, unshakable. It sliced through the tension like a scalpel. "I know everything. I know the timelines, the documents, the misrepresentations. I know the truth." The courtroom was still. Even the judge stopped, momentarily surprised by the simple authority in her voice. Cody's face went whiter still, realization dawning. He had not expected Meri Brown to present evidence and the poise and lucidity to demolish every denial effort. Cody gulped hard. I didn't. I was trying to. You were trying to cover up the truth." Meri cut in, unflappable, even-toned, adamant. "You were trying to rewrite history out of convenience, out of money, out of face-saving. But the DNA does not lie. The records do not lie. And neither am I." A gasp rose from the gallery. The reporters tilted forward, pen and keyboard ready. The gravity of the revelation bore down on every person in the courtroom. Even Robyn's lawyer was frozen in place, amazed at the detail and accuracy of Meri's recollection. The judge nodded deliberately. "Mr. Brent," he told him, voice deep but authoritative, "you know that continued lying or tampering with evidence can have serious repercussions." Cody fell back, vanquished, speechless. He could not even manage that. Every rationalization, every plea of innocence of purpose, was shown to be empty in the face of indisputable proof and unshakable truth. Meri's fingers stayed clasped under skirtados. Her gaze, calm and firm, watched him as understanding fell. Decision had been made. This was the time she had struggled for. The time the deceptions could no longer endure the light. The courtroom was no longer just a room of legal formalities. It had evolved into a theater of raw human emotion, every face in the gallery set in anticipation, every whisper a strand in a tapestry of suspense. Newspapermen leaned forward, fingers resting on recorders and keyboards, recording every syllable, every heartbeat. The air felt charged, heavy with the weight of revelation. Christine and Janelle, seated together, exchanged glances that spoke louder than words ever could. Their hands were clenched in silent solidarity, eyes wide, mouths pressed into tight lines. The reality of what Meri had discovered, the secret truths, the pilfered moments, the forged documents, hit them with the urgency of a fait accompli. Even the bailiff, normally a symbol of procedural rectitude, shifted uncomfortably in position. The pages of documents he had clutched in moments before now weighed heavier on his hands, burdened with the weight of consequences that none could yet take in. Robyn Hale's pallid face did not fully take note of the responses that swirled about her. Her gaze darted to Meri, to Cody, then to the judge, following the contours of reality inscribed into the very edges of the room. She was exposed, bare of the carefully built front she had carried for so many years. All her half-whispered rumors, all her hidden secrets she had believed she kept in check, now hung like an anvil waiting to fall. Cody Brent's breathing had steadied, but his shoulders still tense, a man trapped between his pride and his guilt. He knew, as well as any man, that his efforts at manipulation and control had ended in spectacular failure. Each witness, each document, each thread of evidence was against him. The room had changed. He could sense it, a current sweeping over him, rendering him helpless. In the back of the courtroom, a Page 6 journalists mouthed the phrase DNA evidence once more, unable to suppress the shock. Cameras snapped quietly, soundlessly, taking in the tension that no microphone could ever hope to interpret. All minute motion was captured, a quivering hand, a quivering lip, a slow blink. The gallery's interest was no longer perfunctory. It was a living, breathing thing, responding, anticipating, consuming the courtroom in its entirety. Meri was unfazed. She did not look at the gallery. She did not react to gasps or whispers. Her gaze remained locked on the truth unfolding, on the individuals who had concealed it, on the judge whose gavel had still not fallen again but whose presence was so commanding. Every response in the room only emphasized the gravity of her disclosures. The judge, feeling the change, tapped the bench softly, his voice piercing the whispers. "Order in the court," he declared firmly, though not unkindly. "Each individual in the room will command their attention to the task at hand. The evidence brought forward will be carefully reviewed, and testimony will resume." Despite the fading echo of the gavel, the responses lingered. Robyn's lips parted in an attempt to speak, then froze, no words issuing forth. Cody dropped his eyes narrowing, jaw clenched, the turbulence of feeling within him warring with the unescapable truths. Christine and Janelle were holding their breath as they watched years of falsehood unravel. Meri, cool and unflinching, knew the impact she had made. The courtroom was not only observing a legal fight, it was observing the destruction of decades of meticulously devised falsehoods. And in that hush, in the shared draw of breath, the truth drew its first deep, unbridled breath in the open. The judge's hands lay on the great oak bench, fingers tapping lightly, as he started scanning the papers Meri had presented. The blue folder, its edges worn a little from frequent use, felt nearly animate in the faintly lit courtroom. Every page was heavy with significance, every sheet a murmur of long-buried truths. He hesitated on the first page, brow creased, lips pinched together. His eyes read the lines, slowly, soaking up the dates, the signatures, the remarks. The air seemed to vibrate with expectation. Each breath in the room was timed to the flipping of one page. Meri's fingers lay folded in her lap, still, but every ounce of her attention vibrated within her. She was aware that the evidence would speak for itself, but she also knew the room would feel the weight of the moment, the gradual, inexorable uncovering of lies that had long lain hidden. Cody fidgeted in his chair, restless and impatient. He attempted to catch the judge's eye, to silently beg leniency, understanding, disbelief. But the judge's eyes were keen, trained, unbending. There was no space for deception here, no patience for misdirection. Robyn Hale's fingers gripped the arm of her chair. She had always trusted in her meticulous management of appearances, but the pressure of evidence now bearing into the room rendered her pretense brittle. With each page the judge flipped, more and more of the story she had built so carefully began to chip away. The judge picked up a page deliberately, letting the room take in its information. The blue folder exposed not only DNA evidence, well represented, but also medical records, custody documents, and internal memos tracing a decade of minutiae and half-truths. The accuracy of Meri's report allowed no room for second-guessing. A sudden intake of breath shimmered the courtroom. Christine and Janelle, sitting side by side, could hardly restrain the shock, hands clutched together tightly. Even the bailiff leaned forward, an infrequent display of interest supplanting procedural detachment. "Mrs. Brown," the judge finally spoke, his voice calm yet imbued with gravity. "You have submitted a DNA report confirming maternity, alongside supporting documentation of custody and legal filings that contradict previous assertions. Is all of this accurate?" Meri nodded slowly, deliberately. "Yes, Your Honor. Every document, every record, every submission is authentic. It reflects the truth." The judge paused, eyes lifting from the pages to sweep across the room. His eyes rested on Cody and Robyn, measuring, weighing, watching. "And you, Mr. Brent," he said, his voice hard, "knew of these inconsistencies?" Cody's face blanched, and he parted his lips, then closed them once more. The room stood suspended. At last he spoke, hardly audible. I did not. I believed. You believed wrongly." The judge cut in, his voice cutting through the tension. "Thought does not excuse action. Papers, DNA, and court filings don't come under assumption. They are proof." The gavel rested poised above the bench, an unspoken thread of order and control. Cody's shoulders hunched forward, the burden of his actions bearing down. He understood, finally, that no plea of ignorance, no excuse, no claim of protection would serve to shield him from the consequences of the truth. Meri was calm, the tension in her calm contrasting with the turmoil attending Cody. The gallery felt the change. The wave of discovery had passed beyond individual testimony and now ran as an inescapable tide, the tide of unequivocal proof, supported by the DNA and the papers alike. The judge leaned back a little, rubbing his chin as he scanned the next pages. Every new paper supported Meri's story, each one another nail into the coffin of fabricated tales painstakingly woven over the years. The courtroom hung on every subtle gesture, every subtle acknowledgement of fact, as though the walls themselves were listening. The reporter in the back row whispered to her colleague, This is beyond anything I've seen." Each page was a bombshell. Fingers hovered over phones, ready to record, but even the technology appeared unable to contain the seriousness of the moment. The judge sat back at last, looking up, eyes on Cody and Robyn. "We will move on to testimony. But be assured, the evidence here is significant. The court recognizes its significance. Each party represented would be given an airing, but no word would take precedence over documents before me." Meri breathed quietly, though nobody observed it. She hadn't had to raise her voice. The evidence had already been spoken. The room, hushed and taut, appeared to acknowledge it. The reality had come, brought on blue folders and unchangeable DNA sequences, and nothing, no denial, no anger, no manipulation, could disguise it now. Meri Brown's voice was calm when she finally broke her silence, cutting through the quiet gasps that had descended over the court. She did not raise it, she did not plead, she did not demand attention, yet every eye was drawn to her, as though the room itself was compelled to listen. "Your Honor," she began, placing her hands lightly on the table, "I am here to present the truth. The documents submitted reflect the reality of events that transpired over the past decade. DNA proof establishes my biological relationship with the child in dispute. Custody documents and hospital records indicate my rights were misstated, fabricated, and overruled against my will." The gallery shifted uncomfortably. Even the reporters, schooled in recording the remarkable, edged in closer, feeling that history was being made before their eyes. Christine and Janelle shared a glance that said everything. Their hands were clasped tightly, knuckles white. Cody Brent's jaw clenched. He struggled to quell the tremor in his voice as he growled under his breath, but Meri's unruffled calm provided him with no avenue for drama. Each effort to assert control of the story was made useless by the undeniable weight of the testimony. Robyn Hale remained motionless, her mouth gaping, speechless. She had depended all along on the image of stability, on the meticulous management of appearances, and yet here was Meri, unobtrusive yet authoritative, shattering every artfully constructed narrative. Her thoughts reeled, flailing for defense, but the facts were unforgiving. The judge pushed his spectacles up the bridge of his nose, his eyes swinging between Meri, Cody, and Robyn. "Mrs. Brown," he announced, his tone careful but assertive, "your testimony will be documented. You may go on, but speak to the evidence that you have presented. Tell me the order of events that brought about the filing and the presentation of DNA evidence." Meri nodded, her gaze unflinching. She started, her voice steady, near reverie. "I saw things years ago, inconsistencies in records, in testimony, in events that did not hold up. But as time passed, the discrepancies grew in number. Medical records, birth certificates, financial statements, none of it matched that which had been made public or private. It was then that it became obvious my maternal rights had been intentionally misrepresented." She hesitated for a moment, allowing the force of her words to linger. The silence was heavy, bordering on palpable, as though the room itself was holding its breath. "I sought the truth quietly, cautiously," she went on, her voice unshaken. "I spoke with experts, authenticated papers, and drew a DNA sample, legally, ethically, and completely according to federal regulations. The report was conclusive. The child who has grown up thinking that another woman is their mother is, in fact, my own. The evidence is unequivocal." A murmur of shock ran through the gallery. Even the stenographer hesitated for a fraction of a second longer than normal, dictating each word, every feeling. The walls of the courtroom closed in, resonating with the shock of discovery. Cody's hands curled at his sides. Each item Meri described was a direct assault, deconstructing years of lies and manipulation. He attempted to break in, but the judge's stern regard shut him up immediately. Robyn's complexion paled. She had always thought that appearances could save her, that the selective attention of the public eye would work to shield her actions, but Meri's calm strength shattered the facade. For the first time, she felt absolutely powerless, vulnerable before witnesses, before the law, before the truth. Meri went on, unwavering. I am not here to personally attack anybody. I am here to determine the facts, to correct a situation which has distorted truth and bent reality. The records I have provided, the DNA report, custody documents, and health records, substantiate my assertion and disclose the misdeed that has deceived the court and the public for years. The judge shifted forward, his hands on the bench. Sharp, deliberate eyes regarded Meri, then the blue folder, then Cody and Robyn again. The court admits the filing. Your evidence will be considered, and we shall now go on to consider the implications of these findings for the custody and legal issues being considered. Meri breathed softly, hardly at all perceptibly. Her peaceful presence, her unflappable composure, had changed the atmosphere. The courtroom was no longer a place of procedural formality. It had become a room of revelation. Each individual in the room, from lawyers to relatives to journalists, felt the change. Reality, absolute and factual, had stepped into the limelight. Also the bailiff, whose normally stoic presence was that of order and decorum, leaned forward just a little, as though to bear witness to the complete effect of the revelation that was ongoing. The gallery's whispers were still, a collective awareness that nothing could now cover what had been revealed. Cody Brent got up slowly, his back stiff, fingers clutching the rim of the table like a lifeline. Each eye in the room turned his way, expecting some vestige of control, some defense, some explanation that could wash away the relentless reality Meri had so baldly exposed. He swallowed to try to get his throat open, but his voice, when it came, was quavering and barely above a whisper. Your Honor. His words got away from him, tripping themselves up, revealing the carefully concealed panic behind years of rehearsed authority. The judge's eyes were steady, piercing, requiring clarity. Mr. Brent, if you have something to say about the provided evidence, say it now. Keep your remarks factual, not conjectural. Cody swallowed hard. He glanced at Robyn, who was pale and stiff, her fingers gripping the arm of her chair. He turned his gaze to Meri, serene, calm, unshakable, and for the first time, he completely broke down. This isn't. It can't be, he whispered, hardly able to speak. The courtroom breathed as one. Each reporter, each lawyer, each family member felt the tension building, poised like a storm cloud about to burst. Meri did not take her eyes off him. She didn't flinch, didn't say a word, didn't make a single move. Her calm was a dam, restraining the flood of feeling, leaving Cody bare and vulnerable. I didn't mean for it to go like this, he went on, speaking the words as confessions rather than defenses. It was about control. About controlling appearances. I thought I was keeping the family, the network, and the image safe. Christine and Janelle exchanged shocked looks. The words that escaped Cody's mouth were not counterarguments or denials. They were admissions, fractured and inadvertent, but catastrophically obvious. The eyes of the judge narrowed. Mr. Brent, you are not here to explain acts. You are here to report facts. Do you accept the validity of documents and the DNA evidence produced by Mrs. Brown? Cody shook hands while readjusting his position. He opened his mouth, but no intelligible response came forth. The hush in the courtroom became stifling, and only the soft scratch of the stenographer recording each word, each hesitation, each stumble disturbed it. Robyn's lips trembled, and she at last found her voice, though it was feeble, broken. Cody, what is he saying? She breathed to no one in general. Her own face revealed the first hints of terror she had experienced all day, the understanding that the truth would not be stopped, that the carefully constructed tale she had depended on was falling apart. Meri's eyes gentled, not in pity, but with the stillness of someone who knew the long battle of justice and the patience needed to watch it unfold. She had no need to step in. Cody's words, raw and spontaneous, were getting the job done. The judge straightened back slightly, interlocking his fingers. "Mr. Brent," he said slowly, "the court will not abide evasions. You must answer truthfully to the question of whether these documents are authentic and your involvement in what is described by Mrs. Brown." Cody's chin fell, his gaze locked on the highly polished surface of the oak table. The tension in the room was almost physical, each beat of the heart echoed by the stillness, as if the walls themselves were paying attention. He broke his silence at last, barely above a whisper. "The papers, they exist, and I had a hand in it." A shared gasp ran through the courtroom, the noise ringing like the wind down a vacant corridor. Even the bailiff moved, leaning forward into the enormity of what was being said. Cody's reluctant, partial confession had already altered the direction of events. Meri sat still, hands clasped demurely, gaze unflinching. No further words were necessary then. The courtroom sensed the gravity of the admission, the irrevocable authority of revealed truth. For the first time, the room was less court and more chamber of judgment. Each falsehood, each deception, each hidden truth had been revealed in one man's reluctant confession. The stage was now set for more revelations, and the tension was charged, buzzing through each witness, lawyer, and onlooker. The courtroom waited with bated breath. Cody's confession had gotten everyone on edge, but all eyes gradually turned once again to Meri. She sat there, calm and immovable, as though the world's madness was just white noise surrounding her. Then, with purposeful equanimity, she closed the leather satchel in front of her. From it came a second folder. This one was bigger, older, corners curled, edges tattered from years of use. It was a document of history, the kind that no spoken word could support. She set it down slowly on the shiny oak table, in front of the judge, and pushed it forward just so that he could examine it. Risers leaned forward, the movement close to simultaneous, as if they had all been instructed by the air itself to listen. Reporters lifted cameras, fingers hovered over record controls, and lawyers exchanged nervous looks. The judge pushed up his glasses, studying the folder intensely. "Mrs. Brown, what's this?" he inquired, his tone even, but tinged with expectation. Meri's gaze, firm and determined, locked with his. "Your Honor, this folder includes paperwork on the custody and legal control of my child," she replied, her voice direct, measured, controlled. "Those documents demonstrate measures were taken without my agreement, directly opposite the law and standards of morality." The bailiff adjusted his position, the rustling of the movement enhancing the tension in the air. Cody's face stiffened, his fists tightening and relaxing as he understood the next level of truth was going to be revealed. Robyn's fingers sank into her lap, knuckles tightening as she glared at Meri, quiet but obviously disturbed. Meri gently opened the folder, slowly turning over the first page with deliberate slowness. The sound of paper rustling appeared louder than any outcry, and the courtroom responded naturally, hunching in as if attempting to take in the significance before even a glimpse at it. Inside were papers carefully annotated, transfer of care documents, guardianship files, and legal correspondence that had signatures, dates, and official stamps. Every page is a chronicle of deceit, a timeline of manipulation conducted silently, secretly, behind the facade of family and public appearances. She laid the first sheet in front of the judge. His gaze flicked over it, forehead creasing. And then the second. With every turn of the page, weight was added to the evidence, every document substantiating the inescapable fact of guilt. Cody squirmed in his chair, his previous confession bolstered by the tangible evidence before him. Robyn's face lost color as the reality struck more forcefully. The truth was no longer hypothetical, no longer a muted rumor. It was concrete, irrefutable, and here, in this room, laid bare. Meri said nothing for a moment. She allowed the silence to settle, allowed it to thicken and grow heavy, pushing against the hearts of all present. Then she spoke to the judge once more, her voice low but rich. "Your Honor, the proof asserts not only my biological link to this child, but also the illegal seizure and deception regarding my parental rights. These signatures were falsified, these acts carried out under coercion, and these transfers altered to benefit another group." The judge's hands lay on the table, his face a picture of intense seriousness. His eyes scanned the room after he looked up from the pages. "Mrs. Brown, are you saying that what was done by Mr. Brent and Ms. Robyn was purposeful and fraudulent?" Meri nodded, her eyes never leaving his. "Yes, Your Honor. Thoughtful, intentional, and carried out over decades." The courtroom gasped as a whole. Reporters wrote furiously, cameras snapped, and even the veteran lawyers looked taken aback by the breadth of the revelation. Christine and Janelle traded a look, the shared understanding palpable. They had known pieces of the truth, but nothing so completely realized. Meri's quiet authority, juxtaposed against the accused tremors, left the courtroom in silence save for the slight creak of paper and the shared gasp. For a second, time in the room seemed to be held captive, undefined. Each witness, each spectator, realized that the second folder was not just paper, defined property. It was the incarnation of repressed years of truth. Defined property, it was irrefutable. It was justice in flesh and blood. And as Meri gently closed the folder, allowing it to lie on the table like a heavy monument, the room felt one thing beyond doubt. The story they had been told, the account of what had occurred, so carefully constructed over the years, was coming apart at the seams. Undefined Meri Brown's truth had come, and it would not be stopped. Shiver ran through the courtroom, soft at first, then rising to a palpable surge of tension. Everyone in the room sensed it. The air condensed, charged, heavy with expectation. Meri's serene revelation had tipped the scales completely. Cody's earlier efforts to hold control had collapsed, substituted by the irrevocable force of paperwork. Robyn went white, her hands jerking restlessly in her lap. Her eyes flashed to the judge, then back to Meri, hopping desperately for some denial, some excuse, some miracle that could make the truth disappear. There was none. The judge cleared his throat, a commanding signal, but it hardly penetrated the tension-filled silence. He pushed his glasses up and leaned forward, scanning the pages Meri had laid out. "The evidence before the court is persuasive," he said slowly, his words measured. "It raises questions not merely of parental rights, but of possible forgery and impersonation of legal papers." The audience responded at once, gasps spreading like an aftershock. Journalists leaned into each other, saying nothing, fingers flying over notepads, pens scribbling wildly, thumbs ready to press record. Lens tips revolved, catching the unvarnished tension on all faces. The courtroom, usually a place of measured decorum, now felt like the epicenter of a revelation too monumental to contain. Cody rose abruptly, a reflexive motion of desperation. His voice cut through the murmurs like a whip. "This isn't fair. None of this is." "Mr. Brent," the judge thundered, slamming the gavel with a precision that commanded immediate attention. "You will remain seated until spoken to. Do not interrupt proceedings." Cody settled back, but the quake in his body testified to his rage, terror, and powerlessness. Meri, by contrast, sat upright, serene, nearly statuesque. Her gaze, firm and unblinking, dominated the room in unspoken command. Christine leaned in toward Janelle, mumbling under her breath. "It's all here. Every bit of it. She's not making it up." Janelle's eyes were wide, her gaze riveted on the drama unfolding. "I have never known anyone so unruffled," she whispered. Meri's soft throat-clearing demanded attention without a rise. "Your Honor, I have more," she stated, pushing a smaller envelope across the table. The judge accepted it, eyes narrowing as he read the contents. Within were letters, email chains, and notarized affidavits, evidence of letters in which Cody and Robyn openly directed the suppression of Meri's parental rights. The gallery gasped en masse. Reporters wrote, lawyers murmured to each other, and even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Robyn's hands grasped the arm of the chair, fingers digging into the leather. Her face reflected shock, fear, and incredulity. "Mrs. Brown," the judge stated, finally glancing up at the papers in front of him, "you are claiming that not only was there manipulation of legal documents, but also a deliberate attempt to remove you as a parent?" Meri nodded, her tone firm. "Yes, Your Honor. Every move, every paper, every change was designed to remove me from my child's life and to tell a story that benefited others and dismiss the truth." The courtroom was silent, stunned. Cody's mouth had opened, then closed again. He appeared to measure his next words, having a sense that any answer could only further seal his guilt. An individual reporter whispered, barely above a whisper, to his companion. This is bigger than I anticipated. This can change everything." Meri's eyes swept around the room, getting the response of every individual in the room. Her voice, steady but firm, was weighed with the years she had suffered. The truth cannot be silenced. And now, the truth was before this court. The silence was oppressive, full of the promise of revelation. Meri was not just there for the first time in years. She was in charge. The courtroom, a hall of law and procedure, had been transformed into a theater in which years of deceit were revealed, in which one woman's unobtrusive strength started to tear down the skillfully built illusions of others. All the eyes in the room grasped the seriousness. Meri Brown's testimony was indubitable. The control, the deceptions, the cunningly concealed stories, they were all falling apart. The courtroom had been a storm, a tempest of revelations and confessions and irrefutable facts. Hours had transpired, but the burden of what had happened seemed centuries long. Meri sat still, hands clasped, her eyes sweeping the room for the final time. She had not cheered. She had not rejoiced. She had just survived, and now, at last, justice was starting to sound. Judge Halverson pushed his glasses up his nose, hunching forward over the bench. Every action was calculated, every phrase weighed. Having examined the paperwork, sworn statements, DNA proof, and all corroborative evidence, this court declares that Meri Brown is the biological and legal mother of the child previously known as Robyn Brown. There was a simultaneous intake of breath in the gallery. Christine's hand shot to her mouth. Janelle's eyes brimmed with tears. Reporters wrote furiously, cameras flashing, catching the instant in frozen images that would spread like wildfire by the hour. Robyn's face went white, shock etched into each crease. Cody, for the first time, hid his face in his hands, silence engulfing the room. The gavel, which had rung like a hammer all day, now lay still, its authority undiminished but muted, as if it too accepted the burden of truth. All previous transfers of parental rights that were executed under coercion or deception are hereby rescinded and declared null and void, the judge went on. Custody and legal power are restored to Meri Brown forthwith. All relevant documents, transfers, and contracts will be examined for possible criminal and civil liabilities. Meri's lips clamped together. She didn't smile. Relief was muted here, not in words, but in quiet, in having it understood that the truth had at last been acknowledged, that the years of silence and repression were no longer hers alone to carry. Christine moved slowly toward Meri, their eyes meeting in a wordless understanding. Janelle trailed behind them, their hands clinking together in a firm, uncomplicated grasp. No fanfare, no cheering. Only acknowledgement, solidarity, and a common feeling of victory over oppression. Robyn rose, shaking, her eyes unable to lift to meet Meri's. Cody fidgeted uneasily at her side, the burden of his lies and confessions finally resting on him. I lied, RJ whispered, his voice low, almost inaudible. RJ, everything I lied about was to save myself, to save the image, to save what I believed was the family. I was wrong. The judge nodded, his face serious. This court recognizes the courage and strength of Meri Brown. Let this record show the findings and let it stand as a reminder. Truth, no matter how late, wins out. Meri breathed lightly. The stress she had built up over years started to dissipate, not altogether, but sufficiently to let a glimmer of peace seep in. She packed her papers, folders, and evidence into her bag, lingering a moment longer. The courtroom cleared slowly, murmurs and whispers echoing down the corridors as word broke more rapidly than anyone could keep pace. Outside, microphones were pushed forward and cameras flashed, but Meri did not talk. She didn't have to. Her silence was her statement, more powerful, more intense than anything she could say. She descended the courthouse steps alone, every step purposeful, steady, reflecting years of stamina, heartache, and quiet strength. Christine and Janelle walked beside her finally, side by side, no words spoken. Just solidarity. Just presence. Meri's tale, long covered by deceit and manipulation, was now validated, acknowledged, and honored. The sun had started to set low in the horizon, stretching long shadows on the courthouse steps. Meri stopped at the top of the stairs, gazing out across the vacant parking lot. She did not glance back. She did not have to. The past had been uncovered, the truth brought out, and though there were still scars, justice had been done. Her name, her identity, her place as a mother, all redeemed. And for the first time in over a decade, Meri Brown walked forward free of the silence that had haunted her, carrying only the weight of truth and the quiet power of survival. And as she disappeared down the deserted street, the courthouse behind her seemed to exhale, a place where lies had been stripped bare and the reality of one woman's courage had finally prevailed.